Okay, this week we're going over perfect squares and square roots, as well as perfect cubes and cube roots. I put both up so that you guys can recognize the differences. Notice that square roots don't have a 2 or anything for the square root, but a cube root is going to have a little 3 right by the radical. So we're going to go over perfect squares. So perfect squares is where you have a rational number whose square root is a whole number. For example, a perfect square can be, let's see, the square root of 4, and that is because it equals 2, and that's because 2 times 2 equals 4, okay? So it has to have a double. It has to have a number times itself equal that in order to be even considered a perfect square. Also, you may have square root of 16, that's going to equal 4, and we know that's because 4 times 4 equals 16, okay? So perfect squares, again, you have a double, you multiply it, that double times itself, and it has to equal the number within the radical, otherwise it's not a perfect square. For example, the square root of 5 is not a perfect square, and it's not a rational number because it's a non-perfect square. Now getting into the square roots, again, you have to have a number times itself equal this number within this radical. 11 times 11 equals 121. Therefore, the square root of 121 is 11. 9 times 9 equals 81. Therefore, the square root of 81 equals 9. But it equals plus or minus 11 plus or minus 9. Now, some of you are going to wonder, well, what does she mean plus or minus 11 plus or minus 9? Basically, this means that it equals positive 11 because positive 11 times 11 equals 121, but it also equals negative 11 because negative 11 times negative 11 is going to give you a positive 121. And it's the same with this as well. Positive 9 times positive 9 equals 81. Also, negative 9 times negative 9 equals positive 81. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to figure out what is the square root of 25. And we're figuring out what times itself is going to give you 25. So what you should have got was positive and negative 5, because 5 times 5 equals 25, as well as negative 5 times negative 5 equals 25. Right. So again, these are perfect squares as well as square roots. Now we're going to get into perfect cubes. So if a perfect square is a rational number that equals a square root that has a square root as a whole number, then we know a perfect cube is also a rational number that has a cube root as a whole number. Okay? So when we think of squares, we're going to think of 2. And when we think of cubes, we're going to think of the number 3. Okay, because that's what it stands for. Squares, 2, cubes, 3. So if I had, let's see, and this is what distinguishes this from a square root. It has to have that 3 in there, otherwise it's just a square root rather than a cube root. So let's make this 27. So what this act is asking you, what is a number times itself 3 times? What number times itself 3 times gives you 27? And that number is 3. Okay. Because 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. 3 times 3 equals 9, and 9 times 3 equals 27. So that is why that is the answer. Now I'm going to go over another one. Oh, that's a big 3. Usually it's not this big, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to say 125. All right, so we're thinking of a number when multiplied by itself 3 times gives you 125. So what you should have got was 5, okay? 5 times 5 equals 25. And when you multiply 25 times 5, you get 125. So again, these are how you figure out perfect cubes. You have to have 3 numbers times itself. So this little 3 in the box kind of gives you a hint that you need 3 numbers that multiply times itself to give you that number within that radical. All right, so I'm gonna go over this next one. And this next one is, let's see, so we're thinking of a number, 3 numbers that are going to equal 216. So I'm gonna give you guys a few minutes to figure that one out. Okay, so what you should have got was 6. And that's because 6 times 6 equals 36. And if we multiply that 36 times 6 again, 10, 9, 20, 21, it's going to equal 216. Okay. All right, I'll give you a few minutes to figure out, well, what number times itself 3 times is going to equal 1,000. And you guys can think of 64 as well while you're thinking of 1,000. Okay. So what you should have got was 10. 10 times 10 equals 100, but 100 times 10 equals 1,000. Okay. And for this next one, we have this one right here should be 4, and it's because 4 times 4 equals 16, and if we multiply 16 times 4, we will get 64. Okay. So again, these are perfect squares right here. These are, perfect cubes right here. These are perfect roots. Together you can look and you can see the difference. This will also be on Class Dojo for those that need a little bit more of a visual to help you study.